project, and then, more importantly, do something that we're going to do every time we do a project, which is a professional way of doing things, which is to establish our professional production workflow. And this, for your first time, we need to go through a few other things before we can do that, okay? And I'm going to list those below. But at the beginning of every project where practical is involved, if you're in a production company, the first thing you would do is establish what your workflow is going to be. Okay, so everybody is using the correct formats, correct frame rates, correct resolution, correct compression, colour space, all these kind of things that you're going to learn about, they need to be established early on. Now it's fairly simple to manage, hopefully, in a group of 14, 15 of us. But if you're working in a post-production team of 2,000, which is quite common on a big production for a film, then you need to have that very clearly signposted from the beginning. And if people don't stick to it, it can collapse the whole thing. Okay, so this is why it's important. And it's not just a hypothetical, you are going to have to stick to it. Alright? So I'll be clarifying what a production workflow is and why it's important. Okay? So, competition criteria and guidelines. So over on the right hand side, obviously we've put things in your brief on Moodle. Some people have been able to look at it, some haven't. And if there's people still having issues with Moodle logins, we can get that sorted after the session today. If you could wait till 2:45, then we can get it sorted then. Alright? So on this right hand side, I want you, just as a group, just to re-clarify what you've got to do. And anything you've found out that others might not have noticed in some of the rules and regulations. So, who's up first? What have we got to do, or what have you got to do? I haven't got to do it. What have you got to do? Anyone?
Create a pitch.
Create a pitch.
Based on the Bible.
Create a pitch based on the Bible.
Something out of the Bible, really.
So
Do you know, on their Twitter,
yeah.
it said character, and they put him. I was like, whoa now. So
Create
I don't
a
know if
pitch.
it's meant to be a man, because I've got a woman. So,
Is that just some lazy misogynistic kind of
a little
phrase,
sneaky
maybe?
thing, you never know.
I think it might be. I think people tend to veer towards the masculine, don't they? Which is
Well,
unfortunate. Unless it's a she, and then it's she. So, create a pitch based on, not the Bible, because it's not the whole Bible, is it?
No, just a
Yeah? More accurately, a Bible story, or,
character.
yeah, or a phrase, or a passage. Alright, anything else? Anything else that you need to know? How long is it going to be?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. Can you go over 2 minutes, do you think?
It's frowned upon.
Frowned upon. I would take that as ignore. If it doesn't take a rocket scientist to brush through a video nowadays and it tells you the duration. If it's 1 second over, they just won't read it. Because if anyone then comes back and says, why has this person won it? It's 2 minutes, 1 second. Then they'll have a legal case on their hands, especially when there's 25 grand involved. So, yeah, don't think you can be a second over. So just live with that happy reality, really. So 2 minutes.
It can't be exactly the same as the story. You've got to like show it as your own, the way
It's
you
got to
perceive
be
it.
original.
You're going to adapt it yourself.
Yeah. So it can't be exactly the same.
Yeah, so I would say that'd be a bit dull as well.
Yeah.
Original adaptation. Alright, good, Tara. Anyone else apart from Tara? Since she's answering for you at the moment. Create a pitch based on the Bible or Bible story. 2 minutes, no longer. Original adaptation. Anything else? Anyone be reading through the do's and don'ts, the blueprints? What rating can this be? All these questions.
Oh, it's
you
got to
should
be
asking
universal.
yourself.
It's got to be universal.
Has it definitely?
I think so.
Have we had that established?
No.
Because I would say some of those trailers I saw the other day weren't universal, so is that definitely the case?
PG.
It's older.
Can we define, because you're going to need to, can someone make that their first job, after we've started talking about, after we finish talking, is make one of your first jobs to define age, okay?
You have to ensure you've got an audience behind it as well. So like you have to make sure someone will watch it.
So what's that? You've got to define an audience.
Yeah, you've got to make sure that someone will watch it.
How do you do that? How's it asking you to do that?
I suppose you could like ask your friends to watch it, like, yeah, I've got a little bit of an audience on the go. But it does say ensure you've got an audience.
Yeah, but do they want proof?
some kind of surveys or like focus groups.
Yeah, it could do. I mean, I'm just saying, are they asking for proof of that?
It did say something on there, but I can't remember.
Right, again, let's just clarify, yeah? So these things change every year. You know, I could base it on what they were doing last year, but it could be all wrong. So define age restrictions. Yeah, are there any? And I'll put here, do they require evidence? That might be just saying, don't just make any old piffle that's got no suggested audience. They're probably trying to avoid things like experimental video art pieces or something that have got no audience bar, very rare in middle class folk who go to the tape. Yeah? They're probably saying it needs a story, it needs to be watchable. Okay? So we've got a couple of questions there, so that's good to get them out the air. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If you're not sure about something, let's get it out as a group and try and answer it as a group. Yeah? We're not competing against each other yet. Alright? Anything else that we're missing big time here? We've got the length, we've got in essence what it's meant to be, an original adaptation from a Bible story, no longer than 2 minutes. We need to define the age restrictions if there are any, because if it doesn't say it anywhere, then we can assume it can be anything, can't we, safely? But that could also be part of that, define an audience, because they're not going to make something that's an infringement of Ofcom's regulations. So if you've got some kind of violence against animals in there, violence against children, all that kind of thing, you're not going to get it through, because they won't be able to make it either. So bear that in mind. Might be a good part, hint hint, as part of your research for this project, is to just check your idea against Ofcom and BBFC regulations. Okay? I know it seems like a bureaucratic task, but it's one that could dictate whether your idea gets chosen or not, so it's quite an important one for you. Okay? Remember, this is real, this is not hypothetical anymore, you are entering something, so you need to check all these things clearly. Okay? So check regulations. And I'll put here BBFC and Ofcom. Okay? Ofcom's website's horrible, but you will be able to find their regulations on there. And they define them by, they're basically defined by law. So it's not Ofcom coming up with these things. You'll find all the categories are based on one particular white paper, green paper element of law. So there'll be child protection, animal cruelty, drugs and alcohol, so on and so forth, violence, gender-based violence, so on and so forth. So you need to check all those things to make sure you're not infringing any of them or coming close.